All right, I'm going to try to contain my excitement. I was just going through my notes for this week, and there's just so much good stuff in here. Um, those weeks I wish we were live because I'd love to have the give and take with you guys live, like you're actually in the classroom. We used to do that back in my day. Um, so much good stuff. So a couple high level things in your assignments this week: segmenting and social media, along with HIPAA. What I try to do here is bring together, rather than give you 3 or 4 assignments and this start to feel like an undergrad class where you're checking the box. I try to kind of lump them all together. And what you'll see as you go through the content is social media websites, platforms, so lend themselves to segmenting. That I want to bring those concepts together in your mind and have you think about how you're going to use them to reach some of the audiences you previously identified, but making sure that you give a nod to the privacy laws, right? Because it's always a risk, although a relatively low risk in this particular format, that you use your digital tools and market to patients in a way that the patients thinks you're divulging something about them. Why do you know they're interested in serving up this content? It's been an issue since the days of direct mail and everything else. But I think bringing them all together and just kind of thinking about how that package works, right? How do you put on the list? How do you target? What do you do? I like seeing your work because it should give you some good creative ground to be able to demonstrate knowledge of all 3 topics, which is how we apply segmenting, what social media can do for us and how you can use it for segmenting, and then HIPAA. So enjoy that. In your video elevator pitch, please don't read. Please be casual. Literally, we were walking down the hall. I recognize you. I stopped you. I asked you, what are you working on? And you spend 45 seconds to a minute telling me, don't. When I watch these, if it's clear you're reading, no, that's not the idea. I want you to be comfortable to stop and say, hey, work on this great project. Here at the nursing home, we've had census issues, right? New competition, older building, our volume isn't what it's supposed to be. So I've been taking this marketing class. I've done a SWOT analysis. I've seen that we have some real weaknesses inside, but at the same time, externally, because there's this thing called external analysis. I looked at the competition and kind of saw what they were. And in a few weeks, I'm hoping to bring through some real suggestions tactically about things we can do, talking to certain audiences that might raise our senses. That's I talk about what you're working on, right? Maybe a little more detail. But what you want is for someone to go, that's interesting. I want to learn more. Okay. So that gets that. But let's get to the stuff because there's 3 chapters this week. And I want to point the good stuff and the bad stuff, right? So in chapter 5, again, my bias in the beginning, I taught you the consumer adoption model, right? In chapter 5, it's going to talk about healthcare consumers and who are consumers. On page 135, I think there's one of the best pieces in this book. There's a chart about the difference between consumers of health services and consumers of other services. And you need to read this with your own lens as a consumer because the rules here are wacky, right? You need referrals. There's rules, there's regulations. There's no other transaction in our life that is like that. And I think it's important to go through it and understand it because it will remind you how complex this is. And when you're marketing to people and you need them to make an action, they got to be able to take the action, right? If it requires too many steps or too many barriers, or they got to go to their insurance company or the private care, they may or may not. So it's a good framing. I really like that chart. Also in chapter 5, they begin to get into segmentation on page 148. Market segmentation for healthcare products. This is great because you're going to be asked to segment soon. And this gives you the definition by demographics, by geographic, by psychographic, by health risk, by use. There's no perfect answer, right? What you're trying to do is say, okay, here's some constructs by which we divide up audiences. This is a way I can think of dividing up my audience. Remember why we do this, right? Because you don't have the money or resources to market everything to everybody all the time. So you gotta tighten in and focus. Back in the day, we used to buy geographic lists of by block, by census block, by zip code, and mail to those blocks. You've got a lot of other tools at your resources now. And this begins to talk about some of the ways you might break them apart. And when you talk about segmenting, one of the things that helps me see that you understand what it's about is not just identifying how you're going to segment in the paper, sorry, in the presentation and in this week's assignment, but also why, right? So when I look at this I think is the best because no perfect answers, but defend. Always be able to tell me why you're doing what you're doing, right? But this chapter moves on. There's some stuff about consumer decision making. Whip through it a little bit. You'll find the stuff about decision making to be a longer form of the adoption model. One of the reasons I love that adoption model is it's just so freaking short, sweet, and to the point. And when you look at the 10 points on page 162, you say, oh, they all fit in that adoption model. Okay, just good, continuous reminders that way. We move to chapter 10 about health communication. One of the lighter chapters. It's important that you understand this stuff. We don't spend a ton of time in it until you get to, sorry, I had a note here. The stuff on page 325 about communication sources, informal sources, formal sources. Intentionally understanding how you want to get messages out is important. And communication theory is where I started my education. And the stuff in here about context and message, channels and timing is it's very academic. But if you've ever wondered why communication doesn't work, understanding that some of the stuff is important, especially the page on 329, the communication process, sender, message, encoding, channels, receiver, decoding, response, feedback, and especially number 9, noise. If there is too much between you and them, it's not going to get there, right? So think about it. If your strategy is a email strategy, that you're going to drop emails into the boxes of your segmented customer, well, you better be accounting for noise, because what's your inbox look like today? And how many different things are you getting, right? Think about, just because you send it, don't mean they receive it, right? And if you've got kids, we know this. I'm sorry. It's true, though. I talk till I'm blue in the face, but you just don't get it. I love the communication process. I used to have a long lecture in here about it, but people told me it wasn't relevant. To me, it's so foundational, because it doesn't matter how great your message is. If you've got the wrong sender or you don't get to the receiver, if they don't understand it, right? Health literacy is so important. If you use terms they don't understand, all of that will break it down. The barriers to communication stuff that follow, I think, is really important. Social, cultural, channel. We're not going to do a lot of message design in this course, but this is designed to help you both in work. So one of the things I want you to be able to do as professionals is when you're at work and there's a discussion about marketing, I want you to be able to be grounded enough in the foundation that you can ask smart questions, right? Have we done the research? Do we know what the external looks like? This here is the barriers to communication, to me, is a place where internal communication really comes in, right? Organizations always want to think, why don't my people know? And an empowered employee is such an important brand ambassador. There's that old search that says people who need stuff in healthcare, first place they turn is to either a friend, a neighbor, a coworker they know that had done, or someone they know that works in healthcare. Your employees, your coworkers, knowing what your story is, your message is, your brand is, whether you're a group of 2 or 2,000, is important. And why they don't get it was all right here in the barriers to communication. We tell them too much, we overload. You guys know this stuff. But if you read this and think about this, it can really kind of make you more valuable just as a manager trying to communicate to people as well. I think it's great. The literacy levels, something we can never forget. Writing to that 5th grade audience, there's whole classes about this, and it means something. It's really hard in our industry, right? Because we deal with the most educated workforce in history. Think about how long our nurses, our doctors, we go to school, right? We think up here, our customer, we're already got a complex topic. Let's get it simple. Let's get it down there. Understand what literacy is about, approaches to effective communication. It's good stuff. It's fun stuff. I mean, I got a degree in it, so I love it. But I think you'll find it thought-provoking. When you get to chapter 13, social media and healthcare marketing. So my disclaimer is, everything that's written about social media and digital media is outdated the minute it's printed because the world keeps changing so quickly, right? What I hope you will get out of this chapter is either some familiarity with terms and what they mean, because people think they know, right? They don't know. Um, Lots of interesting information. They call it the modern marketer's medium. Ooh, learned something there, huh? Um, but getting into what social media marketing versus earned media, which is important, that's PR. Earned media is a marketing strategy, and making sure you understand what that is versus paid media. Lots of exhibits in here. It gets into websites and that, which is kind of thrown away. I'm going to tell you the stuff they talk about the value of social media engagement. Nobody ever correctly estimates how hard it is to keep people fully engaged in social media. They never want to invest enough people. They never want to post often enough, post relevant enough. It's hard. There's some stuff here about gleaning from inbound messages that's important. But think about, for every inbound message, you better have a strategy to answer it, right? When someone posts on your site, you suck. You got to have a soft way of doing that without violating their privacy, having them start a campaign against you. So there's some thought-provoking stuff in here. Almost everybody includes social media topics or tactics in their plan. And so this is more about the risks and the benefits. I don't suspect you'll find your tactic here, but it might help you better define, oh, I could try it this way. Some good stuff about monitoring social media. One of the worst things, so ratings and reviews, right? So everyone has the Press Ganey surveys and they do that, but where's your customer get it from? It is astounding to me how many people get healthcare reviews on Yelp. I mean, I like restaurant reviews on Yelp, and half the time they're good. But there's a million sites, Google reviews, Yelp. Monitoring social media to understand what people are saying about you might be more important than you think. We're going through a project right now where we're basically bringing someone in to amalgamate reviews, make sure that we get the good reviews to the top, because there's all this stuff about indexing, and the more often they do, because there's nothing worse than one bad review negating 42 more. It's just important to understand. There's people making whole livings out of this, and it would be, it's fascinating, but paying attention to what they're saying out there is important, be it on Facebook, be it on Yelp, be it anywhere else. So that's so much good stuff in here this week. When you're done, theoretically you're halfway done, but I think you're a little better than halfway done, because we go to the 4th of July after that. Week 7 in this course is kind of a catch-up course. So we really will have done 4 of the 7 intense weeks. It's a great chance for you to look at kind of your final presentation. A lot of these parts are starting to come together, so kind of get it together that way. You can look ahead to the ethics board of the week. We will pivot a little bit next week and talk about customer satisfaction. You take some of this consumerism stuff together. If I don't talk to you before, I do hope you have a great 4th of July weekend. I plan on it. If I'm back, I'm traveling this week. So if my email's a little spotty, know that I am in the deep recesses of South Georgia, and then I get to drive to New Orleans and move my daughter from New Orleans to Nashville before I come back here to sunny Connecticut. So weird week for me. Great week for you guys. Reach out. Let me know how it's going. Keep up the good work. Run away. Talk soon. And I hope that some of what I just did practices some of that communication theory of good stuff that I laid out. If not, let me know. All right. Thanks, guys.